Hi, Chris Yonker here, and I'm here with Justin Van Epps, and we're going to talk about the alignment of personal and professional vision today, especially for folks that are business owners and entrepreneurs, in reference to that are really just making decisions over time within the context of their business. And one of the things that we found as we started working with companies and owners that we were very similar, even though we're different folks in regards to our approach. We were outcome centered in regards to what people were trying to accomplish personally, and also that first before getting into the business. Yeah, do you want to speak a little bit into how you got into looking at things that way, maybe from a personal experience or from working with a client?
Sure. Yeah. So just in my own life, the career path that I was on was to basically run a good-sized company. I had the opportunity to run a $200 million company, and then I went to work for a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 corporation, and was going to be groomed for a senior role. And I realized that at the time, I was running, an organization that was global. I was traveling a lot. I had 2 kids, a third on the way, and I just realized that there's no way for me to do that successfully and also make the decisions I wanted to make for my family, right? Which was to be able to be present to coach my son's soccer team through the week, for example, right? Like that would not have happened if I was running a large company.
Right.
So with that in mind, I got off that train, right? And I built a consulting practice that was really structured around flexibility and the ability for me to, obviously earn the income I needed to earn, but at the same time do that in a way that allowed me to be present with my family. So just in my own life, that's something that I kind of came to the fork in the road and decided that I needed to take the path less traveled in some ways.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is a path less traveled. And part of, and you can see you agree with this philosophy, is that I look at an opportunity that presents itself, and I might say, well, if I don't take this, then what? And I think a lot of folks look at things as an either-or scenario instead of an and scenario. It's like, well, either I do this or that. I can't possibly have both. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that philosophy?
I think you can have both, right? But you have to be thoughtful in terms of how you approach that, right? And you actually have to think about it.
Right.
So I think very often what happens is people, they go down a path professionally, and they're kind of on that train, and they don't really stop to consider, maybe I could set some boundaries of what that looks like and how I approach that so that it lines up more effectively in my own life, right? With my family, et cetera. What's interesting is that there's a shift in that thought process. So younger generations, millennials specifically, are thinking much more about, hey, I care more about how my life looks personally, and I'll figure out how to make the professional piece fit into that, right? So there's been a shift in that generationally, but I think for a lot of folks out in the workforce today, especially folks that are a little bit older and maybe further along in their career, I think to a large extent the career has driven what their life looks like as opposed to the opposite.
That's right. Yeah. So beginning with a personal vision in regards to what you want your life look like could be life experiences, time with your spouse, parenting if parenting's part of that. All of these pieces really fill in and equate to really what it is that we're trying to drive. Because the business, in essence, hopefully is somewhere what you're passionate about, and it's not just something that you do just to generate revenue. Hopefully there's some level of passion and alignment to that, but also it's it should give you the economics that you need to generate your reality.
Yeah, and the reality is that there isn't a right or wrong answer, right? So for example, I have 2 clients, they're both $50 million companies. One of those, they want to grow, and so the trajectory for them is really focused on growth. The other is more about, hey, I want to sustain kind of the business where it is at that 50 million mark because it's a good lifestyle, and we have a big impact in our community, and I don't need to grow, right? So it's a different decision process based on that professionally, right, and personally. So if you say, hey, I want to grow and I want to grow rapidly, well, the decisions you're making are going to be different than if you say, hey, I just really want to maintain what we have and increase, profitability, for example, right? How do I maximize profitability because I know my top line is going to be capped?
Yeah.
So not right or wrong, just different. And the way you approach it would also be different as well in terms of how you run the business.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. And it begins with the not only what it is you're looking to create, but also you got to believe that it's possible. Because if you don't believe it's possible, you're not even going to start going down that road. We start anchoring how too soon. When we're trying to create a vision, it's not about figuring out how initially. It's figuring out what it is we want to create and why we want to create it, and then we can do the how. But oftentimes people bring the how in too soon, and then it shuts down the process. They don't even get into the creative process.
Yeah, I mean you raise a really good point, which is what do I want my life to look like, right? And not just think about that in terms of your profession, but also just in terms of more holistically of like, hey, my life outside of work, my family, friends, where do I want to travel? Do I not want to travel? Where do I want to live? There's all kinds of things that can go into that process of this is what my life looks like, right? Here's how I think about that.
Yeah.
And then once you understand that, that helps you filter the kinds of decisions you need to make professionally, right? So let's say that you realize, like I did, I don't want to travel globally right now. Well, for me, that meant with my own business, basically minimizing where I would do work, right? So while my kids were young, I basically only accepted engagements that were on the East Coast. I did go to the West Coast, and I didn't go internationally, even though I had those opportunities, but I knew that that was not something I wanted to do, right? Now that my kids are older and they're getting ready to go off to college, well, guess what? It's easier for me to go to the West Coast or go overseas if I want to.
Yeah.
Right? So that those filters may change with time, right, as your life changes.
Yes.
But understanding kind of what you care about, what's important to you, and then saying, okay, how do I now align that with what I'm actually doing professionally is important.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks, Justin.